Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Your Mortgage Process. I am, of course, your host, Greg Wareham. We got a fantastic guest for you today, Mr. Michael Mendillo. Michael, thanks for joining us.
Greg, thanks for having me.
I appreciate you being here. I know you're busy, and to everyone out there, so Michael is the regional president for First Service Residential, and it's the largest property management company in North America, correct?
Yes.
So that's U.S. and Canada. You guys are the biggest company.
Well, I would say if we want to cover it across the board, we are definitely in the top two, if not one. Yes.
It fluctuates.
Yeah.
It's like the highest worth person in the world, right?
It depends on the acquisitions that year and the organic growth, but yes.
Well, I mean, I certainly appreciate you taking the time. I know you have a huge scope of responsibility, Michael, so thank you.
Thank you.
Would you be kind enough to just talk a little bit about yourself, how you got into the property management business?
Sure. So actually celebrating 33 years in the real estate management business and industry.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. But I think it really stems back to, at that time, property management, and I'm going to say third-party community association management was not where it is today on a global sense.
Okay.
So if you go back to the 33 years ago, it was not something that you heard about in college or that it was a career path. It was one of those careers that you fell into.
Right.
And I say fell into, it really was very fragmented business, fragmented industry, and very, very, very small mom and pop companies that were managing properties. So it wasn't one that people really sought out as a long-term career.
Sure.
So back then, you really fell into it. I came out of college. I knew I wanted to get into the real estate business, but it was, I'll say, more of the sexy kind of real estate business that's developing, maybe even selling on high-level investment real estate was really something that I thought would be appealing.
Well, it's sexy.
And love it. Yeah. And I started doing that. And I came across two individuals that were actually managing the real estate.
Okay.
That I was involved with marketing and selling. And I was very intrigued on what they did, which was much more operational. Okay. And it was much more consistent of a cash flow kind of business. But it was limited, at least at the time, I felt it was limited of opportunities to really spike your income, where if you were selling large pieces of real estate or developing, you have an opportunity to drive very high-end revenue or income for yourself in that situation. But I stayed connected to the individuals for about a short period of time, I'd say 3 years or so. Mm-hmm. And I really saw an opportunity that we can grow an actual business that was reoccurring revenue.
Sure.
And in an industry that was fragmented, so the competition of big visionary views of what the industry could be or what you can take a company was very appealing to me because I felt that we weren't up against large competitors. So using the car rental business as an example, if you're getting into that business now, you have Alamo, you have Avis, and you have, Enterprise.
Sure.
So you really need to say, okay, how am I going to compete in this market? Same thing in the burger world as well.
Sure.
There was no McDonald's or Burger King of property management. Mm-hmm. So to me, it was kind of a really open opportunity. Now, at the time, in my early 20s, I had no idea what that meant, but that's probably good because I was naive and didn't realize oh my God, this is going to be a lot of work. This is going to be a lot of work to do this. And, but that was good that I didn't know because it was more of the vision of, wow, could we take this business and build something that people would really want to look at this as a career in property management. That was an early kind of
kind of back in that time, it didn't even really exist on a big scale, right? To your point, it's all mom and pop.
It was all mom and pop.
And it takes a lot of foresight with yourself and the different people involved in the project to say, hey, listen, how do we pull this thing all together, make it significantly more efficient, and provide a ton of value to the industry and kind of a little bit more ubiquity to what's going on.
Yeah, and what was one of the key areas that we realized early on was that we needed capital which we didn't have.
Right.
We were barely making payroll. So we needed capital. And we already knew at that point that technology was going to play a huge part in this, which my two partners had strong technology background at the time, but they were not programmers and looking at that end of it. But we knew that, streamlining efficiencies was going to be important. So we had a decision to make. Do we go to a bank and get a loan and put the money in? Do we raise the capital on our own, or do we look for a strategic partner?
Right.
And we fell on a strategic partner. And sometimes I think fate plays a big part
a lot
in
of times,
business.
yeah.
In business, and we came across, and it's a great story. We read in the Wall Street Journal that a company called First Service Corporation acquired a third-party management company in Boca Raton, Florida, called Prime Management Company.
Okay.
Didn't know the company, but when we were reading about this acquisition, they were the same size as we were at the time.
Okay.
Now, the principal of the company at that time was exiting, retiring. And First Service's original view of acquiring this company was to really cross-pollinate another company that they owned in the Florida market, which was a landscaping company. And they thought, if we acquire this management company and we have the landscaping, could we cross-pollinate the opportunities of driving more revenue and also controlling service in a sense of where they can have a differentiator. But First Service at the time did not have a vision of really expanding on the property management side. But when we read this article, we thought it was intriguing of why would a public company have any interest in a third-party management company, which at the time, all contracts were 30 days or 60 days with or without cause cancellation.
Okay.
So you can have a 3-year contract with a property with the association, but if they didn't like you, they can basically terminate you in 60 or 90 days. So the glue, there was no glue even.
Sure.
On, well, at least you have a 3-year contract unless you really do something. So we're kind of scratching our head and say, this doesn't make sense. So we called. We called directly, based out of Toronto, and at the time, which obviously still is the chairman, but at the time he was CEO and founder, Jay Hennick. We called, and he picked up the phone. Big personality, great leader.
Yeah,
and was intrigued and said, "You know what? Why don't you come up to Toronto and talk to us?"
That's fantastic.
And we did. We went up, and then we started to build a relationship. It took about a year.
Okay.
Before First Service thought this was a good move for them, because they really weren't going down an avenue of community association management.
Right.
Where they did think there was opportunities in that field were more in the Sunbelt areas, Arizona, Florida, where they can have landscaping, 3-4 seasons.
Sure.
Versus, the Northeast, where you only have it maybe 2 seasons out of it. So with that, we built a relationship, and that was important, that the organization was not a public company of looking on how to squeeze the lemons, if you will.
Right.
It was really an organization that was looking at building a brand, and that attracted us to eventually then
That's great.
do the deal.
So that's just great to pick up the phone and make the phone call. Right? Everyone out there listening, pick up the phone and make the phone call, right? Because that leads everything in the right direction. And then the importance of partnering with the right company. Because First Service, it's a publicly traded company.
First Service Corporation is a publicly traded company. First Service Residential is under the umbrella
Understood.
of the holding company, which is that. But at that point, there was no First Service Residential.
Sure.
It was just First Service Corporation. But this was the difference of what I see in the private equity field doing a roll-up versus the First Service Residential model or the First Service Corporation model, which truly was a partnership. And we courted for a year. First of all, for them to have interest in us, we were a small company.
Sure.
Our EBITDA was probably equals 3 martinis now of cost. It was nothing to write home about. So, but at the end of the day, they saw value.
Right.
They saw vision. They saw entrepreneurial. ism in us, and that is what really makes the difference of how they see the business and how they align with entrepreneurial people.
You know what? I want to go a little bit deeper on that because it's a small segment of what the American dream is, right? So a lot of people could fantasize about that. How do I get into a partnership with a bigger company that can help fund what we're trying to do? Now, when you walk into that room in Canada, in Toronto, and you're meeting with the CEO of this company, how do you get across your vision? How do you get them to buy in, Michael?
Well, so what helped in this situation was that Jay Hennick and actually the CFO at the time, who's now the CEO, Scott Patterson, were very entrepreneurial thinkers.
Right.
So that was a huge bridge already built. They were already entrepreneurial and they believed in people leading. So we're a service business.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing that we do at First Service that actually builds anything. So there's not a car that we build that you could say, you know what, I don't like the salesperson, but I love the brand. I'm buying the car. I only got to deal with him or her for 3 days and then I leave. We are the product. So they really put a lot of emphasis of people,
Right.
you know, integrity, focus, energy. Now, we were clearly not polished at the time because one, we were never worked under an umbrella of a large organization or a public company. So we were, you know, I say it's like Street Fighters. You know, we didn't have a polish to us, and we sniffed out an opportunity to make money. We would go for it. Yes, we had integrity. Yes, we were making sure that our brand was up to par, but we didn't have a lot of the heart of the house structure down at all. I mean, we didn't know any of the terminologies and stuff. You know, opportunity, grab it, make money, service them, make sure they're happy, and then where's the money? Okay, where does it go? Pay this bill, pay that bill. Kind of simple as that.
Sure, and you build it off vision and value.
That's how it was, you know. But what I say part of this was us talking about what we're doing and what we see. The marriage was both sides seeing the opportunity.
Sure.
Wait a minute. Their perspective was this is an industry that's untapped.
Mm-hmm.
You know, could we start to funnel dollars through the team and go out and acquire other management companies and now expand our footprint? And then how do we now look organically to start building our business one account at a time? And then what do we look through, you know, other efficiencies through technology, through standard procedures? You know, it was a long journey. I mean, actually, April 1st is 26 years ago that I partnered, and it is a partnership with First Service.
Congratulations.
And we were the first company to partner that I stayed. The first company that I mentioned was one where the principal exited.
Okay.
You know? So we were the first to, I'm going to stay. I'm staying here 26 years later, not only still here, but watch this incredible journey that we built. And by many, many other hands in this. This is not a one person, one team. This is a true collaboration of talent that has been over the years.
And you know what, I want to get into a little bit later. I want to talk about, you know, the culture and how you build all of that, because there's 17,000 people work for First Service Residential right now, right?
Yes.
17,000 people, $7 billion in funds you guys manage.
Yes.
And I mean, I could countless millions of actual individual units that you manage.
Yes, about 1.8. Yes.
It's phenomenal. And then to be able to hold the culture as you build and expand like that, that's a great story. But before I come to that part, I want people to understand what it is that your company does.
So if in a simple version of it is we are the company that a condominium complex, a co-op, a lifestyle community, a high-rise community, a portfolio or HOA community hires to manage the property. So I would say the minute a person opens the door of their home in a condominium and steps out, everything that you see and everything that makes the outside run until you drive off the property, we are responsible for. So we're responsible for one, we serve the board. The board is just like politically, in politics, it's an elective board by fellow homeowners.
Right. So it's that HOA, Homeowners Association board.
Right. And they're elected by their fellow neighbors.
Right.
Those people are volunteer, and it ranges from anywhere from 5 to, it can go up to, I've seen as high as 14 board members, but usually on an average, it's 7 board members. These individuals don't really need to have any type of specific skill set. Right. As long as these individuals are up to par on their payments, their maintenance or condo fees, they are qualified to run. Now, It's gotten more sophisticated over the years, so people do run on like platforms.
Sure.
And now people are looking at resumes and saying, wow, he or she has this background, that would be great. So it is getting a bit more strategic in that. But technically, as long as your payment is up to par, you can run. And if you win by popularity, you're on the board. And it's a non-compensatory role. So it's a volunteer. So let's start there. Their responsibilities by their elected neighbors are responsible for now hiring the people they feel that needs to run the community.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the financial aspect of the community, collecting the fees, making the payments that are connected to the community, but also the cosmetic of it, the risk of it, the safety of it, encompasses all of that. So we could be viewed as the gatekeeper, if you will. So, coordinating contracts with any of their legal, if there's capital improvements that need to be done, the landscaping, the snow removal, the pest control, all of if there's a pool, opening and closing of it, the safety of the pool.
Sure.
So it could be depending on the amenities that are at the community. That's our responsibility, is really making sure that all those checks and balances are in place. And we serve the board. We serve the board.
So now we have the boards all put together, and you really have two options if you're a homeowners association. You can manage everything internally. So you can take all the money in, you can manage all the problems and everything that comes up.
That would be called self-manage. And there are properties that very minimal percentage. But yes, that would be a self-managed. They don't want any management company guiding them. They're acting as the management company.
So you're self-managing and you got to deal with all the problems, or you hire the team of experts to be able to run it,
correct,
like your company, and you're just implementing the rules they put into place.
Yes, correct? And the rules, start from when the property was built. Right. So the developer has to follow a certain process, and then in that state or in that county, then the bylaws are created. They have to be approved. But then as the homeowners buy, and then enough homeowners buy that where the board now is resident driven.
Sure.
They have fiduciary responsibilities of their bylaws. And they have outside attorneys that are guidance for them.
Sure.
And they have other professionals as well, engineers where it's applicable, architects where it's applicable, accountants are one that they need, because every year there has to be an outside auditor that comes in. It's not we're auditing the books, because we need someone to make sure that, hey, are they in line, as well. So it's an outside accounting firm that does the actual audits every year and records that. And then the residents who live there get a copy of all this. So they see that, they can come and ask any questions. It should be very transparent. Some boards are more transparent than others. That becomes the conflict, and we have to come in and guide that.
Why would anyone want to self-manage it? I mean, I'm listening to what you're saying, thinking, "Oh man, that's a lot of work."
It is.
So if I have a full-time job and I'm on the HOA, I got to worry about ground care. I have to worry about problems with the units. I have to worry about the money. I have to worry about everything. Why would anyone want to do that?
Yeah, and also in some communities there might be employees, we call them associates, that work at the property. So now you're also in the HR business if you're self-managed.
Right.
So now you're dealing with hiring, firing, are you doing all the right, dealing with all the training and stuff. It's a huge liability back to the community. In most cases, why it goes self-managed is the lack of the knowledge they know what it takes to manage it. I don't want to say education because I don't want to offend anyone thinking that a person could be very well educated, but do they have the knowledge in this specific field, in this specific area, to realize where your risks are?
Yeah.
So, in my role as president, I'm surrounded with incredibly talented people. And I know that in each one of their specific areas that report to me are more talented in that area than I am.
Sure.
I recognize that. So I lean for them for guidance. And the guidance gives me a well-balanced decision to make on if this is a risk we want to take,
right,
or if this is a risk we don't take.
Mm-hmm.
Being on the board should be the same thing. Be looking at all the professionals that surround you and taking in all the knowledge and making sure that it's not just, oh, this will be good, trust me. Like, why do you feel that? We have to be able to explain and show that path so that the board in those decisions are making sound decisions, even though they're not the experts. Most people don't realize that because it is a huge liability to self-manage.
Yeah, you bring up
Huge
such a great
liability.
point that didn't even occur to me, is if you have employees there, now you have HR problem. Now you have you need an HR department. You need to hire someone for the HR. Like what?
And it's extremely sensitive now.
Oh,
HR
sure.
has risen over the last couple of years of just heightened awareness around stuff. And in some cases, the self-managed, if you looked at the self-managed, and there's not a big percentage of them, but of the self-managed, a lot of them, for some reason, have been self-managed for a long time, and some of them are in the active adult communities.
Yeah.
Those are age restricted, 55 and better. So you also have people that might have retired and remembered when they were working what was okay 5 years ago,
right,
let alone 10, 15, 20, is not only frowned upon, it is a huge spotlight of, wow, like everything evolves. Every year it evolves of it. So
like any
it
industry,
creates
there's just
huge liabilities.
All right,
for
I need you to talk to my dad because he's on the board of an HOA up in.
Do we manage it?
I don't think that you
All
do.
right, so
I
we
think
should.
I
Let's
think
start
they're
there.
self-managed, and he had to like run to be on the HOA, and he's just like rolling eyes, saying, "This is like what's going on here?"
Yeah, I have to
it's more
talk to him.
complicated. Okay,
Yeah.
It's up in New England. He lives in Massachusetts,
And we have a huge presence in the New England market in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and New Hampshire. So happy to.
I got to make the
Happy
introduction.
to do that. Happy to do that.
So now, from a lending standpoint, I know that you and I both know that when you're trying to lend on a property that has an HOA, so it's a condo, townhouse, even some 55 or olders, there's a form that's required to do some sort of condo certification, right? To check investor concentration, reserves, all of that. Now, does your company handle that portion of it as well?
Yeah. So yes, I mean we have the data.
Yeah.
So every time at one of our properties that there is a transaction, a sale, before the sale is complete, we have to give basic. I'm going to keep it simple. Is we have to like audit, send the clean books of how the association is operating.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's a form. It's very common. And by the way, all management companies have to do this, not we alone. So that has to go before it gets to closing. There's a request, so it usually comes from the realtor. We'll make sure that they have that. But even if a resident is refinancing their home, the bank requires that as well. So we are the ones that drive. So we see on a weekly basis, we track every transaction because we have to process. So we have a whole team that has to process this information that is needed to complete the transaction. We also do that for the refinance side.
Yeah.
So yes, there is stumbling blocks that association board members sometimes don't realize, that the balance of how many investors own in that community could change the dynamics on what a bank would allow to lend.
Sure.
Which could be a quarter of a point or
Could be-
more.
or more,
or
depending on the
less.
transaction.
Right. Which can change the dynamics of someone acquiring a home and saying, wait a minute, that just raised another X amount per month.
Right.
So well managed And well managed is important because it even plays the part of what the value
Sure.
of the community can go even on the finance side.
Yeah, well, and on the saleability side. So it's really difficult if you're not fitting into the box on a conventional mortgage for investor concentration, for reserves, for there's flood requirements, a lot of things that go into that. The property that you live in or that you're potentially looking to buy, it may be less saleable in the future if you're not fitting into that box. And I think it's critical to have a company that's managing all of that. You go to one person. I mean, I've had so many conversations, Michael, with organizations or HOAs that are self-managed where they have no idea what you're talking about. And they don't get it. In some situations, you actually can't lend in there. Or to your point, you have to come up with something really creative that's more expensive to be able to do a transaction.
Right. And there. Greg, think of it, some board members who have no intent on selling, it's not a priority to them.
Mm-hmm.
So being on the board, you're responsible for not what you personally want. It's what's the best, the betterment of the community.
Right.
I say it's like a well-oiled family.
Right.
You know, you have to make decisions that's best for the family. It might not be for one individual, son or daughter, or even for you and your significant other. But what's the best decision for the family? Like business has a lot of simple approaches, and people overcomplicate this. But in a community, the role of a board is what is best for the community.
Sure.
Not for me as a board member, or what is my agenda I'm trying to sell in 3 years. I better get the fees down low and get this. Like, that's not
people don't really think like that.
That's not your role. Your role is really like, if I stay or go,
yeah.
What do you do? And that's a culture thinking.
Yeah, no question about it. Now, are you involved at all in the litigation side when there's litigation within an HOA?
Sure. I mean, not in sense of practicing. We don't practice law, and we are not hired in that. But as again goes back to the gatekeeper. It's like the orchestra leader,
right?
When there is if whatever that lawsuit may be, no, we are deeply involved with the strategy around it, or the archives, or the information, or we may be the testimonial of why, depending on how it goes, and it could be lawsuits of every angle. But yes, management companies are involved.
Okay, because it could be such a challenge from a lending standpoint when there's litigation. Sometimes that can just shut the door on it. And that's even if the association is suing somebody else. We're going to ask questions about if it's the builder or anything like that.
Sure.
Structural stability and everything
it all
like that.
has to be transparent and be laid out for that as well.
I have a question for you about regional differences. So we're shooting this show in New Jersey, and I would imagine that a lot of what you see in New Jersey could be different than, say, what you see in Florida, as far as what's required or what different associations are looking for. What are some of the concerns in those areas?
Yes. So the answer is always going to be yes, because it does have, the local laws, the state laws, the county laws, and even the town laws that play a part. So as the president of the East, I cover from New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New York State, New Jersey, PA, Delaware, Maryland, Washington, D.C., Virginia, West Virginia, and North and South Carolina. So that is my responsibility as a partner here at First Service Residential. So all of those states I mentioned, all of them have different nuances that change the game in the state.
Right.
But then there are certain laws and restrictions that cover also within the county or the town. So when COVID hit, we had to follow like multi directions, right? From the higher up all the way to what is the town doing?
Right.
What is the actual town? Then there was the county. So to your question it is being the subject matter experts in that local market. And that's how we've built, that's the magic of First Services. We built the organization to where we are very local.
Right.
But we have the national resources to bring in to help support the local team so that they can deliver the service. But are they stuck with everything on their shoulders like in this industry? Because it's mostly, by all means, 98, 99% is mom and pop.
Right.
All that is on their weight. So the day-to-day business is one thing. Now to start thinking about, legal and all other areas, you need those resources to help so that all of it could be efficient.
And you have offices in all the areas that you manage, right? Local offices.
Correct. I won't say like we don't have offices in every town that we're in.
But in the States.
But by all means in the States, and in a lot of them we have multiple in the States because it covers different geographic areas.
So this could be a sensitive topic, but I want to bring up Florida, and some of the unfortunate disasters we saw down in there in a condo association, and how that has changed the industry, if at all.
Yeah, it's changed on a personal end. My business partner of 30 years, he and his wife I lost in that tragic.
I'm so sorry, Michael.
So from a personal perspective, I'm on the phone, and he just retired 2 years before that, on the phone with him on Father's Day, on the Sunday, and that Thursday that happens, right? So from a personal perspective, it hit us at First Service incredibly, incredibly hard.
Yeah, sorry.
We did not, thank you very, very much. We did not manage that community. But clearly being the largest management presence in Florida as well.
Right.
Over 16, I think it's over 1,600 communities that we manage just in Florida. So it's a huge presence. So the impact of we have buildings not far from there, walking distance. So the impact of it was one thing. But as things started to unravel and they peel the onion back through, lawsuits and how and why, it has changed dramatically from the lending end to also just from the insurance side of it, of what is required, and especially high-rise buildings that are on the water anywhere in the country, anywhere. So the restrictions and or what is required and the accountability got much more granular. So yeah, it really had a huge impact. I mean, in my career, I never heard of any building ever imploding. Yeah. I'm not talking about the ones we manage. I'm talking any.
Right.
I never ever heard that. So it was, just a freak, situation. But the more they deal with it, they're looking at, what were the inspections on the property and the foundation and how was it built? And, all these come into play.
Sure.
And look, I don't know how it all turned out. None of my business in that aspect, but I could tell you from the properties we manage that are similar, like on the water, everything changed for all the industry.
Sure.
Changed.
Just more inspections, more regulation associated with it.
Huge regulations, huge inspections. The cadence of inspections were uplifted, and also, what professionals need to be tied into this as well. And by the way, it's the right thing to do.
Sure,
it's the right thing to do.
No question about it. Well, I appreciate your feedback on that. I know it's a sensitive issue for you. I want to talk a little bit. We're talking about condo and association, what your company does. I think a fascinating part of who you are is some of the leadership skills that you have. I just want to go to a quick break, and when I come back, Mike, I want to talk about leadership. How do you hold the culture together, and how do you build it moving forward?
Sure.
All right, we'll be back with you in 2 minutes. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Your Mortgage Process. I'm, of course, your host, Greg Wareham, Michael Mandillo today. Michael, listen, I mean, I'm gonna brag about you. So in reading through your profile, I know that you've done different leadership speeches across the country, different organizational groups. You've done them at Columbia. You've done them at NYU. What's the strongest characteristic of a good leader?
I would say self-awareness, like awareness, is a huge characteristic trait.
That's a great one. Because we've all kind of worked with those people that are completely not self-aware, right?
Right, yes.
But floating around, it's almost kind of an old school thing where it's more of it's not so much a democracy, like they just say what they want to say and they manage in the fashion that they want to. But to your point about self-awareness, it's critical if you're going to manage and lead a large group of people. When you look at, for you, your self-awareness, what do you think you have to be self-aware about?
Well, I think, part of the self-awareness too is great listening skills. So I think if you
Makes sense.
truly listen to who you're speaking with, and self-awareness of really detaching from the feedback looked upon as criticism. Right. So there is reasons why people say, let me share the feedback. And someone says, well, you're just a fancy word for you're going to criticize. But you know what? Words stay in our head.
Yeah.
And the right narratives do change the way you think, So I do believe your thinking creates your behavior. So listening is important because you really have to be aware that it's coming from the perspective of what they're seeing. Doesn't mean it's right or wrong, and with no judgment, which is very difficult to do, but you are coming from their perspective, right?
Yeah.
And the same as that's like great empathy.
Sure.
Is really knowing what they're feeling from their side of how they're explaining whatever it may be.
Yeah, and being really aware of that, right? So we were chatting a little bit about this off air. Like when you're having those conversations, you're listening to people. It's not about hearing what they're saying. It's about really paying attention to the detail of what they're saying so you can understand the perspective that they're coming from.
Correct.
Like a therapist.
Correct.
Right?
Yes. And by the way, there are parts that come easier for people.
Sure.
From a standpoint of it might be like, wow, I do this really well in an environment of work, but I might not do it as well in my personal life, right? Because that's the human side of us.
Have you been talking to my wife again?
Same as with mine. So there's a lot of different angles of this.
Right.
It's not as simple as the formula I do believe in, but it's not easy for everybody.
Right.
No matter how well you feel you may have, and mastering it is not, wow, you really figured out how to influence it's really the belief. Mm-hmm. So you can read all the books you want, listen to all the podcasts you want of successful people in this area. But if all you're doing is repeating what you learned, then it will not have the impact. Because I do believe that the majority of people have a great awareness, if they're aware of it or not, the awareness of smelling and sniffing BS.
Right.
They'll just go, there's something, and when
Right.
people say, I don't know what it is, I say, that's your moral compass.
Right.
Right. Everyone has a moral compass,
You got the PS meter.
And all of a sudden it's just kind of like maybe they can't put a fingerprint on it.
Right.
But now look, there are some people that have been, have a lot of personal scar tissue.
Right.
That just don't trust anyone. That might have been of things that they were surrounded in their lives. Those are people different, right? They just don't trust. But I'm talking about the average person that just says, she was a little off, or he was a little off,
Right.
So the authenticity of what you learn is important, that it comes out, because if it's not authentic and you memorize that when I speak to someone, I have to take a minute to a minute and a half and have an icebreaker. Then there's another minute and a minute and a half. I have to then ask them about their personal life.
Right. Let me reiterate their issue to them.
Oh my God.
Right.
I cringe with this.
Right.
It's like the minute I'm hearing this, I'm like, you lost me. It has to be a real flow of nothing different than if you're sitting in your backyard with a friend or a family member and you're talking. So the conversational side of this is important. But I think listening, self-awareness is incredibly important in the base process.
It's so challenging. We live in a society that really has enabled a you versus me individualistic approach to things, right? It's always got you versus me, and that's kind of that's capitalism in some ways, but where people aren't generally thinking about the collective of us, right? And as a leader, you can't be in that standoffish you versus me. You have to come from that perspective of us. And that starts, to your point with it, Michael, to listen to what's going on and have a real conversation about it. and not something that's so structured or something that's not so, that's agenda free.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, that's a great point.
Yeah.
And I do think that people in general overbake things. I mean, life is incredibly simple, but it has a huge journey of complexities in between.
Yeah.
But as simple as, hey, we're born, we have to live a life, we have to make money to, have a roof over our head, and then unfortunately, we all have the same book. It ends the same way.
Yeah.
The end.
Right.
Just a matter how many chapters are in your book.
Sure.
Right.
And who's writing that book, right? Are you writing it or someone else?
And the complexity of that is each chapter.
Right.
Right. That's the complexity. But keeping it, in a sense of where it's simple, I think that if we all just were kind, like just genuinely kind, and that we listened, I think you'd see a dramatic change in everything that we touch in our lives. Now, that's as simple as that sound. It's so difficult.
We're so lockstep with that because I look at it from a perspective of we're all the same. Like an individual human being has no more or less value than another human being.
Correct.
Now, somehow gets clouded in the world. Well, this person has more money or this person has more success or a better athlete or whatever it is, all of which are individual skill sets that can be true. But the intrinsic value of a human being is the same across the board, no matter what you do. And when you're trying to train, coach, develop people, understanding that the person that you're working with is equal from a human standpoint, and then making the investment into them to help them build, grow, and cultivate what's unique and strong to them.
Yeah, and I think a good example, and I feel that I hear this from a lot of other business owners and executives that I interact with inside the industry, outside the industry, education, all, is there's this rub of lack of generational collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the stigma of each of those generations. So if you just use Gen X, Millennial, Gen Zs, each one there is a stigma connected.
Right.
And each generation, overemphasizes the one they want to hit on.
It's so true.
Right?
You guys are lazy.
Right.
You guys are selfish.
Right. And then they go, you people know nothing about technology.
Right.
You're not, like, each one, and it's this like little bit of a chip
right
on the shoulder. And it's you want to punch me, I'll punch you back,
Right.
You don't know business, you only been in it for 2 days. Well, you've been in it too long and you don't know technology. By the way, truth in all of them.
Yeah.
Truth in all of them.
Definitely.
That's where it goes back to is, look, put your guard down. Why don't we start with saying that it really doesn't matter how old anyone is or what generation you're in. Why don't we start with just putting your guard down, and why don't we just listen to what someone has to say? Because if it's impactful and we feel that it could make sense or we could cultivate that, then why don't we do that for the betterment of us? Now, that is a hard and high hurdle.
No doubt.
But if you stick to really walking the walk and then holding yourself accountable, including allowing a trust within the organization, a trust of where people feel I can push back and call you out.
Right.
And when I say call you out, all the way up to me is like, you have to allow that.
Yeah.
And if you don't, that's the BS meter. You have to allow that. Now, look, that's where I go back to being kind.
Right.
Think before you speak. Deliver your narratives in a way that, it's laying it out. You don't have to apologize for everything. Like, I love you, but,
right.
You might as well just hit me with the punch. Just say, here's what it is. If the foundation is strong, here's where I feel we're not going down the right avenue. Here's where I think you might have a blind spot.
Right.
And by the way, when you're listening, truly listen to that.
Right.
Truly listen. And if it goes, damn, I think you might be right here. Or I'm not sure I agree, tell me more.
Right.
Like that collaborative, it breaks the walls down. No one cares. And by the way, in life, I think that's the same.
No, we could go on a whole social tangent
no,
about
right. Like just
right,
who cares what they
right.
just what makes sense,
Yeah.
what's right, how are we delivering it, and that's the hard part of it,
And that's a great nugget there too. As a leader who manages thousands of people, you have to be okay with someone giving you direct feedback.
Yes.
As well. You can't be offended by it. You can't set a culture where people are afraid to communicate with you, because once you've set that culture, they're not even going to talk to you, and then everything festers.
And the human side of that is, like, I would tell you 100%. I've never ever received feedback that I didn't feel initially pissed off, I didn't like it, or I wasn't hurt, or I was like, screw you, what are you talking? Like, that feeling will never go away.
Right.
It's how long that feeling sits.
Sure.
Is mastering it. Is it for a month, or is it for 3 minutes?
Right.
And the quicker you can pivot to say, you know what, I do believe this. If I'm pushing somebody's buttons, it's most likely because I see that there's more that can come out. There's a better pathway for that individual, and I believe in them. If I'm ignoring somebody, that's when they should be looking and going, because it's like, if you gave up, then I'm giving up. I'm giving up. If we're not going to do this together, but if you're really pushing the individual, in most strong leaders, good leaders, they're doing that because they see more that can be there, but you do have to walk the walk. And you know what? There is I believe in fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
That there's certain things is just like, your first week of working out and not seeing any results, then just keep doing it. In time, you'll be like, now I get it. Now it's right. Now it's the thing to do. That has a lot of meaning in anything.
I love what you said about getting the direct feedback, and it can hurt your feelings.
Yeah,
it can make me angry. Yeah, might sit in my craw.
Are you that cold? Like are your veins that iced that you're not like, screw you? Who are you to tell me what to do? But it really is about, oh my God, that goes self-awareness.
Yeah,
control, listen, and it's hard. And by the way, there is no doubt I have my moments where I flip off.
Sure.
And I was like, okay, that did work. Reboot, fell off the bike, get back on, ride again.
Oops.
Yeah. 100%. 100%.
That's fantastic. So from a company standpoint, we mentioned before there's 17,000 people that work for the organization. And you just won the Great Place to Work Award in 2023. I think it's March 2023.
Super excited about that.
I mean, that's 17,000 people basically have to almost nominate you, right? Through some sort of employee.
Yes. It's not an easy task to do this, and because you can't maneuver the answers here. So it's really like, we asked them, what are they going to say? We can't go, it's like, nope, they're going to say it. And that's it. So,
one of the things I really like about your organization, so if you go on the website and you look at certifications that you guys have, or that that the team has, that's the only certification that's listed.
Yeah.
Because that's the one that matters. And that's how
at the end of the day,
yeah.
Education was a difficult challenge. It was a difficult road for me.
Yeah.
By choice. I was not disciplined. I didn't, attention span of a gnat. Like, it just was not my gig by choice. I got out. It took 6 years, but I did finally get out. But I say that for a reason, is that at the end of the day, I admire people who have all the accreditation, all the different skills that they've hit on getting different types of, CMCA or PCAMs or all these amazing, amazing accomplishments. So I admire that, because I don't have the discipline too. But at the end of the day, in this industry, in a service business, if people don't feel good where they work, if they don't feel that they are supported, if they don't feel that they can lean into somebody, if they're not getting the true appreciation, doesn't matter all of the schooling you did or all the knowledge, it's not going to work.
It's the number one reason people leave.
Culture will by far eat strategic, tactical, academics. It'll eat it for lunch. Eat it for lunch. Now, of course, we need skilled people. And of course, we need people who have certain degrees for certain roles. And of course, we need incredible policies and processes and standard operating procedures, you need that to run an organization.
Sure.
But you can have all that. But at the end of the day, if you don't have the people feeling they want to be here every day, nothing is happening.
I have a question for you on that. So culture is critically important to any organization, any great organization.
Yes.
So when you're looking to hire someone, are you looking to see if they fit your culture?
Oh my God, yes.
Okay.
Oh, I feel if there's any degree I have in,
Yeah.
it's the PhD in culture, because I can tell you it comes out of my pores, the importance of a culture. Now, you don't have a great culture all the time, and you have you pivot at points with culture. Mm-hmm. It could be generational shifts. It could be technology shifts. It could be a tragic gravity like COVID.
Sure.
Like those are when the culture is tested, but it's also where you need to adjust a culture. So we're not perfect. I want to make sure that, anyone hearing this isn't saying like, oh, you said we're not perfect, but I tell you what we are. We believe in the perfect effort.
Right.
The perfect effort
That's well
of
put.
culture. Yeah. And the culture of this organization is everything that we stand behind. It's the most amazing people.
Yeah.
Like we are gifted to have and grateful for the amazing people that have been with this organization. And by the way, ones that aren't with us anymore, they played a huge part in any way. Even the ones that were difficult or challenged us, they played a part in this culture being built. But to answer your question on when we are hiring, culture is a huge part of that. And the way at least our process is when we're hiring people, it's just not a resume. It's just not an interview. It's an interview with different individuals in the organization. Because at the same time, we want to know, could we break bread with you?
Right.
Can you have a cup of coffee? Can you have a dinner or a lunch? And then how would that feel? Because, at the end of the day, we're all different. There are people with different beliefs and stuff, and we welcome that beyond belief. But taking away all that, is there a connection?
Right.
Is there, because the connection is what drives the culture. The belief in that connection is really what is the root that holds us together.
Yeah.
No matter what our, dreams and aspirations are or beliefs are, what's holding us together. And for First Service, it is incredibly important that it is that culture of what we can do for appreciation to our people, train, educate, but also have them have a voice.
Right.
And what can we do to improve?
Right.
So we ask them every year, but we don't just survey our own associates and ask, where can we improve? And it's very, very specific. We then come back and say, okay, this is what you said. So we want them to know they were heard. This is what you said. Mm-hmm. And by the way, now this is what you said. Here's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And by the way, hold us accountable because we expect to do this within X amount of time frame, on that.
That's fantastic, because that's the part that companies fall short on. A lot of people, everyone does the survey.
Right.
And everyone gets the survey back, and you can even get the feedback on the survey. But what's the action plan that you can hold us accountable to where you think we need to improve? And that's where companies fall short.
And that action plan should be simple. One pager. Like it really doesn't have to be a thesis. And it really just has to be the simple things on what we're going to do. And then you have to do it.
Right.
That's the execution.
Yeah.
Right? Because if everything is in place and we don't execute, then the trust factor comes in.
Hey. If we're asking the people who work for the company to execute, then we as leaders have to execute as well.
Absolutely.
At even a higher level.
Right. And I do think there is such huge opportunity that when we miss our mark, we have a blind spot as leaders. When we didn't deliver what we said, because by the way, those do happen.
Right.
All of those. I see the opportunity that it shows the human side of everybody. So own that.
Exactly.
But it's to say, look, you gave us too much credit.
Right.
There's times where I look and go, oh my God, I got 3 more miles in my car. I got to get gas. someone, well, you can run a big business, but you can't even you don't even know when to put gas in you. Like the human side is things happen.
Sure.
And that is another area of where you can flip the script to where it shows, wow, they even own it when they just go, screw up.
One of the things I love that you said, Michael, talking about culture, sometimes you just get to a stress test, whether it was COVID or insert anything in there. And that stress test, knowing that you need to change in some way, shape, or form. And even more importantly, with what you said, I love it's about the effort of culture, right? It's about, are we giving it 100% effort to have the best possible culture, realizing nobody's perfect.
Right.
But if that's what we're striving for, then that's a big long-term win.
Early in my career, I saw a little article I can't even remember who it was or what, but the article was about a person that in his company had this great vision on launching a new product. And he got everyone on board. They put all the people in place. And at the end of the day, they launched this new product and with all the hype on it. And it failed drastically. And going into the next year on what's the new product, his team was like, how are you going to go out and face all of our employees with this gigantic failure?
Right.
Like, we can't ignore it. What are we going to do? And then you want to have them, and here's the next venture. And this stayed with me early on, which I think was one of the things that I felt the power of this was he just said, I think I'll figure it out when I'm out on stage. He did have a plan. He walked out on stage and everybody was definitely going, ooh, this is embarrassing. Like we were here a year ago and he was
They're
all
like
about
cringing
this.
for him.
Like, oh my, what is he going to do?
Right.
He took out a raw egg and broke it over his head. I thought this was genius.
It's fantastic.
And he said, I have egg on my face. And the place erupted because he just owned it.
That's fantastic.
Just owned it.
And it's over.
Done. He
Right.
owned it. And that resonated with me to the extent of where you look and you say, people who are visionary and lead by trailblazing, you're going to make mistakes. In fact, you're going to make more mistakes than your successes are.
Yeah.
But don't sweep it under the carpet. Just, we tried, we put ourselves out there. We really believed in it when we did it. But we realized pretty quickly or after a period of time it wasn't going to work and we stopped it.
Yeah.
But show that type of thinking is that the company you want to be part of.
Yeah.
One is always thinking forward, or we have the most amount of hires in the history of our company has been in the last 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had the most we call boomerangs. People that left and came back and the grass was not greener.
Right.
And all of it drives on the culture and the trajectory of their opportunity. So we're seeing now more that employees are looking at saying, we want to be with an organization that is forward thinking,
Sure,
that is pushing and trying, and also for ones that want to, build their career, where's my runway? And
Right.
if I don't have a runway where I am, where am I going with this?
Yeah, I saw 10% of the hires last year were the boomerangs, for people that came back to
Yes.
the company. And I want to just piggyback off the egg on the guy's face. My expression's always been, from a leadership standpoint, is if you got to eat crap, don't nibble.
Yeah.
You
Get it
got-
over with.
Right?
Get it over with.
Take it out.
Get it
now,
over with,
now,
right.
and that's it.
Yes.
Your organization does a lot of good philanthropic things as well. You have a real social purpose.
Yes.
What you're trying to accomplish. You mind talking a little bit about that?
Sure. This is a passion of the organization as a whole, but it does stem back to Scott Patterson, who's our CEO of First Service Corporation, which is the public entity, the holding company. And Scott had a great passion around us as an organization. All the companies under First Service Corporation, that we all really should be moving towards a purpose. Obviously, that didn't take a lot of arm twisting,
Right.
and again, that stems back to the culture of the organization. So it wasn't all about, checks and balances and EBITDA and top line, which obviously those are important. We are a business of profit, so they are important. But at the same time, equally important is how do we pay forward as an organization?
Right.
What do we do as an organization that really can make an impact to our own associates or their families, and then also us as an organization doing things for different, needs. So it's not one specific. And that's the other, it goes back to the great culture of that entrepreneurial spirit.
Sure.
Is we allow our teams across North America, and as granular down to one property, if they wanted to do something, and that they can do that. We empower and push and support and embrace all those right things to do. Do it. We're behind you. We've gotten better in a sense of we have great calendars that we can track what we're doing. You want to know, hey, they did this. It really worked. Like, oh my God, we're stuck. We don't have many creative people on our team. What should we do here? So the basis of this really is for us to give back. Like, what could we do to make an impact in somebody's life? And we have watched some remarkable things happen that have moved all of us, of like, this is bigger than just, hey, we have money to write a check, or hey, we've got 17,000 and across the board we have over 40,000 across First Service. This is really about people knowing, no, I'm going to come on a Saturday because I believe in this, and I'm going to come on a Saturday because I want. Oh, by the way, is it okay if I bring my kids, or if I bring my brother or sister?
Yeah.
Like that type of thinking culturally is so good to give back, and it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, I couldn't agree
pay
with you
forward
more.
is the right thing to do.
We were chatting a little bit about it off air. So in my mortgage life, in the mortgage company that I'm affiliated with, we give almost 50% of our profit back towards investment in inner city schools to make sure that these kids are educated and they have a real opportunity in life. And I can't speak enough or have enough respect for an organization like yours that is focused on that, and how do we get back? 'Cause that's what it's all about. It's all about people at the end of the day.
If we're fortunate that things lined up well for us, I mean, obviously a lot of hard work and a lot of focus of the individuals in the organization. But if we are that fortunate, which we feel, what can we do to make an impact in somebody else's? And it's really rewarding. I mean, it really is. We've watched a lot of things over the years. And, the organization was doing some type of social purpose.
Right.
But we didn't, as a company, kind of say, wait a minute. Let's look at this, in a process too.
Yeah,
like,
make
how do
it
we
an
make
initiative
sure
of what we're
an
trying to
initiative
do.
and being
Sure.
part of it? So that's why I said it wasn't twisting anybody's arm. We were all like, well, we're doing it, but like, oh, okay, well, let's really put some efforts and investments internally around making sure that we're doing this the best way we can and make it part of our culture in the organization.
It's fantastic, Michael. So if anyone out there is listening and they have a need for professional management, HOA, go down the list, because you basically handle everything in that property management space. What's the best way to reach out to your company to have the conversation? Is it you? Is it someone on the team?
Anyone looking in the aspects of their property being managed. So I break it down into 3 verticals.
Okay.
Right? We have a high-rise team. The high-rise team is basically 7 stories and up. Those are properties that we manage, and most of those are in cities or outskirts of city areas. We also have our lifestyle vertical, and those are properties that are highly amenitized and have lifestyle programming or some type of programming connected to it. It could be an age restricted, it could be multi-generational, but they're usually those large communities that have the amenities, from pickleball to golf to a clubhouse. And again, it could be multi-generational. It doesn't have to be 55 and better or age restricted. But we do have a team within the lifestyle that specializes in, and we're the largest in these spaces that really understand the vertical thinking and the vertical expertise. You'll meet management companies that say, oh, we have those type of products, and they do. But no one has focused in on vertical, expertise, from the financial aspect of it to the management aspect of it. No one's ever really done that with the service that is needed to successfully, bring that community to the next level. And then we have our third vertical, which is mostly your portfolio properties and HOAs. Those are ones that you really mostly cutting grass, maybe moving snow in the applicable areas where there might be snow. And you have either detached properties, single family homes, or you have like townhouse. But each one of those verticals really require expertise in managing
Makes sense.
those. So if anyone is in need in those areas, and also we work with developers who are putting the shovel in the dirt or pre-shovel in the dirt, and are looking for management companies before there's residents there that they can pass the association on to the residents. So we service all the national builders you can think of. We service the national, the regional, and the parochial, and the locals as well. But you can First Service Residential. We're all over, from our website to I think that's probably the best. But clearly all our information is there. Who to contact. We have business development leaders, but we are not a sales organization driven on salespeople. We are a service organization.
Makes sense.
But we do sell a service, and we are looking to grow the business and the top line. It's important for us as well, and we're very proud of our retention. We have, the highest retention. Last year, we were 97.4% in retention of our client. And again, we're proud of that. Could it be like, oh, you're pounding your chest on this? Yeah, but wouldn't you? Like that's a reflection of our people. Yeah. Again, this is, I just happen to be the orchestra leader. But the team, from our heart of the house, client accounting, corporate accounting, our HR team, our risk, our internal legal team, our IT team, every one of these, our marketing and sales, our management, our managers, each one of them play this incredible part of making what the organization is. So, I say that because that's a reflection on them. It's a huge reflection on all of the success that they bring to the table.
That's great, Michael. Yeah, so if someone just Googles First Service Residential, they'll get all the information that they need. I know you're a really busy person, Michael. Thank you so much for taking the time today to have this conversation with us. I appreciate your perspective on leadership. It's fantastic.
Well, thank you very much, and the best of luck with you as well. It was a blast.
Thank you so much, Michael, and thank you everyone out there for listening. This is Greg Wareham, Michael Mendillo, Your Mortgage Process. Look forward to keep catching up with you next week. Thanks, guys. Thank you for tuning in to this week's edition of Your Mortgage Process, hosted by Greg Wareham, produced by Greg Wareham and Nick Pavis at The Social Rift, and executively produced by The Social Rift. Thank you again for tuning in, and we look forward to catching up with you next week.